sexist. Here's the quote. He, quote, ascribed women to primary domestic functions and failed to appoint many women to positions of power during his presidency. But that simply is not true. Joining us now is Katherine Timpf from campusreform.org. What's your reaction to this? It was brought forward by a sophomore there at the University of South Carolina.
Absolutely. A student came to us. She read this. She was very upset. We talked to her. This just goes to show kind of how automatically accepted the narrative is that conservatives are sexist. Ronald Reagan appointed around 1,400 women to policy-making positions, not cookie-making positions, policy-making positions. Sandra Day O'Connor,
right,
the first female Supreme Court justice. Right. I don't know what this author thinks that job entails. Right, Elizabeth Dole, Jean Kirkpatrick to United Nations.
Somehow those were left out.
Somehow those were left out. Those were not mentioned at all in the textbook.
There was a quote that had this student pretty much outraged. It said, quote, conservatives tend to take basically a pessimistic view of human nature. People are conceived of being corrupt, self-centered, lazy, and incapable of true charity. What was your reaction to that?
This book accuses conservatives of being judgmental, and then it goes on to say a lot of judgmental things about conservatives.
Why was the student reading this book?
Because it was mandatory assigned reading, and this goes to show what a horrible place the college campus can be for a conservative student.
So how does a book like this become mandatory reading for students when it's not full of fact? It's mandatory. They're going to end up getting a grade on their take on it. How does this happen?
If you go to campusreform.org, you see examples of this at colleges everywhere. There's a lot of indoctrination going on. We had a student in April send us a video of a professor saying Republicans are stupid and racist. So it's important for students to come to us, talk about these sorts of things, because introduction to social work profession, there are a lot of things that you could be talking about rather than your personal opinions on how much you hate Ronald Reagan that aren't really founded in fact.
So you have instances here where the mandated reading, including sections such as conservative extremes in the 1980s and early 90s, also mandated in this class here. But a lot of students feel that they're risking their education, their grades, perhaps even a job moving forward if they speak up about this sort of bias in their mandatory reading. What do? Come to you, and then what happens?
We expose it because a lot of people do think it's not okay, and some of these students need support, because I couldn't imagine sitting in that classroom reading that, and you'd want to keep your mouth shut because based on that reading being assigned, you'd probably already get the idea that maybe the professor doesn't like conservatives. So it's very important for students to stand up, come to us, and not be afraid, because if people don't say anything, then this kind of thing can continue.
Sure, exposing bias for what it is.
Exactly.
Katherine Timpf, we thank you, campusreform.org, for being here today.